Worst ways people have died. Alex Bessler, a 23-year-old man, and a friend were hiking in a regional park around 9 in the morning when suddenly thousands of bees appeared. The friend managed to escape and hid in a bathroom, but Alex was not so lucky and was stung more than 1,000 times. Some hikers tried to help him, but it was already impossible. A 44-year-old homeless man, whose name is unknown, used to sleep in a dumpster to stay sheltered at night. However, this time, the truck arrived before he woke up, and he ended up inside the truck. The driver, unaware that someone was there, activated the garbage compactor, and the unfortunate homeless man lost his life crushed. An 18-year-old Australian teenager was surfing with his group and saw a whale, but the boy got too close. The 15-meter animal moved its tail and struck him full on. Worst ways people have died, Part 2. William Brown, 24 years old, bought an electronic cigarette, and it was the worst decision he ever made. While trying it out for the first time, the device's battery exploded in his face. The shrapnel penetrated a major artery in his neck. The young man managed to call for help and was taken to the hospital, but unfortunately, he died 2 days later. Judith Premar, a 56-year-old woman who appeared to live a very luxurious life, but the reality was quite different. One day, the woman went to steal clothes that people donated for those in need, and a movement she made pulled down the ladder she was using, and her arm got stuck. She was left hanging there for more than 6 hours at sub-zero temperatures until the police found her, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. The woman had lost her life due to hypothermia. Worst ways people have died, Part 3. Michael Dwayne Atkins, 41 years old. The man was a hospital worker and was trying to fix an elevator with some colleagues. It is still unknown why this happened, but the elevator fell at high speed while Michael was lying down. He didn't even realize it. Thus, he lost his life, crushed. After an investigation, it was discovered that the man did not have the license to fix elevators, so he should not have been doing that job at that moment. Ibrahim, a 26-year-old villager from southern Indonesia. As usual, his family sent him to look for grass for the cattle and left his motorcycle and his stick near the river. While he was busy cutting grass, he did not realize that 5 crocodiles had positioned themselves right behind him, surrounding him. He had no escape and was brutally devoured by the 5. Worst ways people have died, Part 4. Daniel Hill, 54 years old. One Saturday, Daniel was working in a Michigan factory as he did every day, but this time, as he was walking over a tank full of sulfuric acid, he slipped and fell in. His colleagues, upon seeing this, tried to quickly pull him out, but it was too late. The man had lost his life due to chemical burns. Donald Wright, 64 years old. A couple was kayaking on a river when suddenly a whirlpool formed and began dragging them to the bottom of the water. Donald, who was also kayaking nearby, saw them and tried to help. Unfortunately, he fell into the water. The whirlpool took him to the bottom and he lost his life. The couple Donald tried to help managed to get out of the river, though the woman was in a very serious condition. Worst ways people have died, Part 5. Roman Perozek, 19 years old, was operating his remote-controlled helicopter and everything was going well. But suddenly, the device went crazy, completely out of control. It fell from the sky directly, hitting the boy. The blades, spinning at high speed, decapitated him. Dennis Antiporic, 68 years old. The man used to spend time in the sauna every day, so he took off his clothes, left them outside, and entered. While he was sitting, relaxing, something failed, and the temperature began to rise dramatically to the point that the man collapsed. When he didn't show up after a while, his daughter went to look for him. She says the body was so burned that at first she thought it was a black person. But when she went out and saw the clothes outside, she knew it was her father. He literally lost his life being cooked alive. Worst ways people have died, Part 6. Elizabeth Rivera, 71 years old, lived with 4 pit bulls at her home, and one day, one of them became aggressive. It began barking at the woman, attacked her leg, and knocked her to the ground. Then, It bit her neck. When the granddaughter arrived home, Elizabeth was already dead. Aisha Ahmed, 20 years old, was spending the day at a beach in Dubai with her family when she decided to take a swim. While her parents were chatting under the umbrella, the girl began to drown, and lifeguards quickly went to save her. However, the father stopped them and told them he would not allow strange men to touch his daughter, stating it would be a dishonor to him. He became violent with them, grabbing and hitting them, and claimed he would rather have his daughter die than have strangers touch her. The girl lost her life, and the father was arrested for not letting the professionals do their job. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 7. Suan Ladi, a 54-year-old Thai man, was replacing the wooden beams in his house using a circular saw. However, the wooden board he was mounted on was unstable, and he fell, dropping the tool onto his neck. The saw cut his throat and part of his chest, causing instant death. The man had previously removed the protective cover from the saw blade. If he hadn't removed it, he might still be alive. Ma Ailun, 23 years old, was showering when her iPhone began to ring, so she stepped out of the shower to answer the call, the charger still plugged in. She was talking on the phone to her ear when she suddenly collapsed. The iPhone had electrocuted her. Apple apologized and said it was an isolated case. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 8. Kaiser Carlisle, a 9-year-old boy, was responsible for collecting the bats from players during baseball games. When he went to retrieve one, he didn't realize one of the players was practicing his swing and got hit directly in the head. The boy was wearing a protective helmet as required by the rules, but the impact was so severe that he died just a few days later in the hospital. Mark Blackwood, 18 years old, was working at an amusement park overseeing a roller coaster and saw that it had stopped, so he had the terrible idea to climb onto the tracks and start pushing. Suddenly, the roller coaster started moving again, and the boy tried to hold on with all his might, but on the first turn, he fell from a great height. Unfortunately, he lost his life instantly. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 9. A teenager named Aurora Sheffel was at the beach with some friends taking fun photos on a log. Her friend jumped off, and right after, a wave hit Aurora, causing her to fall, hitting her head and neck. But the worst part was that it dragged the log on top of her. Her friends tried to help her in every way possible, but by the time they finally managed to pull her out, it was too late. Philip Schultz, 35 years old, was waiting for the train to go home after work when he saw a man fall onto the tracks. The train was very close, but Philip tried to help the man. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough time. The train ran over both of them. Philip died instantly from the collision, but the man he tried to help survived. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 10. Paul Comeau Jr., 47 years old, had a large rock in his backyard and was gradually making a hole big enough to bury it so it wouldn't be in the way. When the hole was almost finished, the rock moved and completely crushed the man. His wife, who found him shortly after, called emergency services, but there was nothing they could do as the rock weighed more than 3,000 kilograms. Justin Wilson, a well-known 37-year-old British racing driver, was in the last lap of an Indy car race when the driver Sage Karam, who was just ahead of him, had an accident against the wall. Debris from the car flew everywhere, and unfortunately, a piece struck Justin directly in the head. At that moment, he became unconscious, losing control of his car and crashing into a wall. He went into a coma and died a few days later in the hospital. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 11. Adolfo Carrillo, a 51-year-old Peruvian police officer, faced a dire situation when extortionists placed 2 grenades under a car at a school, demanding $6,000 not to detonate them. With the lives of hundreds of students at risk, the officer attempted to defuse them. Just as he was working on one, it exploded in his hands. He was severely injured and quickly taken to a hospital, but unfortunately, he died hours later. 2 Russian men, whose names are unknown, were calmly at a stoplight on a road when suddenly the ground opened up for some reason. A large hole swallowed their car completely. However, the fall was not the cause of their death. Instead, the hole contained water hotter than 75 degrees Celsius, and upon touching it, they immediately lost their lives. People who cheated death. Henry Walker, a baby less than a year old, was in a building with his mother when it caught fire, and the flames were reaching them. As a last resort, the woman dropped her son, praying that someone there would catch him. Indeed, a man saved him before he hit the ground. The child was fine, but his mother was not so fortunate. Lee Ma, 27 years old, was having a good time with a man, unaware that he was married and that his wife had just come home. She tried to quickly hide to avoid being caught and positioned herself outside the window. The girl couldn't maintain her balance and fell, but luckily, some electrical wires caught her before she reached the ground. However, being in that position could also be dangerous, as she could be electrocuted at any moment. Fortunately, firefighters arrived quickly and safely brought her down. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 12. Johann Offner, a film stuntman, was filming a music video for a hip-hop group when one of the actors, playing with what was supposed to be fake weapons, accidentally used a real and loaded shotgun. Offner was shot and killed. A 29-year-old woman named Ming Ming Chen and a 34-year-old man named Liang Jiao reported to the police very worried that their 5-year-old daughter had disappeared. They claimed they had left the girl alone in the restaurant for a moment and she simply vanished. However, the truth was much more grim. Shortly after, the police discovered that the mother had beaten her daughter to death and hidden her body near a freezer. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 13. Vince Villafor, 46 years old, was going on a kayak trip with his girlfriend, Angelica. However, what he didn't know is that his girlfriend had sabotaged the kayak. Shortly after they began the trip, water started to enter the kayak and it capsized. Angelica did nothing and waited more than 25 minutes to call emergency services to ensure that her boyfriend had already lost his life. Jacques van der Sant, a 29-year-old golfer, competed with his friend to see who could find more golf balls in the lakes on the golf course. They dove into 2 different lakes, and nothing happened. But something terrible occurred in the 3rd lake. While Jacques was searching for more balls at the bottom, a 4-meter crocodile appeared and ended his life. When the rescue team arrived, they found the man's body inside the animal's mouth. Nothing could be done at that point. Worst Ways People Have Died, Part 14. Gerard Moon, 18 years old, was with a 17-year-old friend in their schoolyard at night. They were testing a research project they had done, attaching a skateboard to a rocket to propel it. But the rocket didn't act as they thought. Instead of propelling the skateboard, it exploded. Moon lost his life, and the friend was very lucky to survive. Colin Scott, 23 years old, was taking a walk with his sister in a park with many hot springs, even though it was completely forbidden to bathe and there were warning signs everywhere indicating so. The siblings wanted to take a dip. While his sister was recording, Colin decided to check the temperature of one of the hot springs, slipped, and fell into the water. His sister quickly alerted the park guards, but they couldn't do anything as his body had dissolved due to the acidity of the water.